In this episode, I'm going to show you a simple improv technique called Yes and that can instantly make you a better presenter, leader, and collaborator. Let's do it. Hi there, Rockstar, and welcome to episode 303 of Standout Get Noticed. I'm Christina Canters, a communication skills specialist, and I'm all about helping ambitious leaders and teams to build unshakable confidence and create more impact at work. Now, I've had the idea for this episode noodling around in my head for a while, and I'm very excited to finally share it with you. And it's all to do with the concept of yes and. So firstly, let me ask you, have you ever shared an idea in a meeting and then immediately it got shut down? So someone said, yeah, well, we tried that already, or yeah, but that won't work, or yeah, but we don't have the budget for that. And then, or maybe you've done this to people in your team. And then suddenly the energy just drops. People just stop contributing ideas and the conversation becomes more defensive and argumentative instead of collaborative. So today I want to share with you a communication tool that can completely change the dynamic of your meetings, of your presentations, and the way that you lead conversations. And it's called Yes and. Now, this concept is a very well-known concept in the world of improvisational theatre, improv. But I found that it's a very, very powerful leadership and communication tool that you can bring into the workplace. So today we'll be sharing where yes and comes from, what it actually means and what it doesn't, how you can use it in your meetings, presentations, and conversations, and how to do it without becoming a pushover. So firstly, the concept or the origin of yes and is it comes from improv. So in improv, performers go on stage without a script. Everything is made up in the moment. And there's a game that they play called Yes and. And so the idea is that you have two people or more than two. One person starts with a scenario and they say something, and then the next person has to build on it. So for example, person one says, "Captain, the spaceship is losing oxygen." Person number two then has to start with yes and. So they might say, "Yes, and the only oxygen tank left is on the other side of the ship." And then the third person might jump in and go, "Yes, and a monkey has stolen all the oxygen tanks." And it just keeps going from there and there. What is not supposed to happen is that person one says, "Captain, the spaceship is losing oxygen." And then person two says, "No, it's not. We're not even in space." And so can you see that just shuts down the scene immediately? And so part of the game is to consistently say, yes, and, and that is to build upon what your partner has offered. So that's the concept of yes and. You're acknowledging the contribution and then you're adding something to it. And what happens with this is that flow comes into that exchange. So it continues to move forward. There is more collaboration. There's more openness. And there's an element of safety because everyone knows that no matter how ridiculous their idea is, people are going to accept it and move forward with it. So it creates this sense of trust and safety. There's no wrong ideas in that moment. And so I am going to talk today about bringing this concept into the workplace. And it really is a mix of mindset and also practical, techniques, or like how you can say it. So before we get into that, I want to talk about the opposite of yes and. And I'm sure you've heard this a lot. The opposite of yes and is no but. And so we've all heard this. No, that won't work. No, but have you thought about this? And even when we're giving feedback, oh, you did great in that meeting, but the but basically negates everything that came before it. We've all heard it. I really like your idea, but. And so it's really saying, I actually didn't really like your idea. And so what happens is that people feel rejected, people don't feel safe, they feel like they're being shut down. And then what tends to happen with this is that people will eventually stop sharing their ideas because they're like, well, what's the point? And as a leader, and you may have noticed this, if there is a culture of no but within the team or within the organization, that's when innovation can start to disappear. People start to think, why bother sharing? My idea just gets shut down anyway. or they might feel like rejected if they share a meeting in a public quote unquote space, like with a group of people, and they're openly shut down in front of everyone. They might feel embarrassed or humiliated about that, and they're not going to want to feel that again. So that's going to put them off sharing again. It's the same in a presentation. If you're delivering a presentation and you're asking for engagement from the audience needs to feel safe to do that. And if someone asks a question and you shut it down as the presenter, or if you're asking for contributions and you're like, no, that's not what we're doing here, then people aren't going to feel safe to continue to speak up and share in that presentation. Oh, and another benefit of yes and is think about when people do share ideas, they're not often fully formed. It's just the beginning. They've just got this small spark of an idea. And if people feel willing and safe to share it with a yes and mindset and with a yes and culture, you can then build on that and have other team members build on that initial idea. And then that's how it can build into something completely new or something bigger or something different. So it allows people to build on each other's ideas. It's about embracing the messiness and knowing and understanding that it's okay for an idea to be shared and for it to not be fully formed. And this is the same in improv. So we're embracing the unknown future. We don't know what we're going to create in this improv scene. We might start in space, but we might end up in a farm, right? We're starting off with looking for oxygen tanks. We might end up with making banana pancakes. Whatever that is, it's about embracing that chaos and embracing whatever new thing is going to be formed. And so think about how that might work for you with your team or with your organization if people, how things would be different if people felt safe to share their inkling of an idea, and then everyone else felt safe to then build on that and then to create something bigger and more beautiful than before. So let's talk about the situations at work to use yes and. I've got 3 for you. So firstly, in meetings. So picture this, you're running a brainstorming session, someone suggests an idea that seems unrealistic. Your instinct might be, oh, well, that will never work. What I challenge you to do is to hold that thought. And even though you want to say that won't work, try to bring a yes and response to it. So you might say something like, well, that's an interesting suggestion. Thank you for sharing. It makes me wonder how we could adapt that for our customers. Or you might say, okay, I hear you. Tell me more. Even if your brain is screaming, that will never work. We've tried it. That's a stupid idea. Just tell that part of your brain, it's okay. You can calm down. And all you need to do is just nod and smile and say, okay, tell me more. That's all you need to say. So you don't literally have to say yes and to everything. This is where it's more of a mindset. And it's about bringing this open yes and language into it. So saying, okay, tell me more. Or you can say, and what else? So, Michael, that's a great idea. Thank you for sharing. What other ideas do we have? Okay, that's one idea for the board. Let's write it down. And what else? And what else is a fantastic phrase to use. It's very, very powerful. And so if someone gives you an answer you're not expecting, instead of shutting it down, just try saying, and what else? And what else? The second scenario at work where you can apply yes and is during presentations. And with my clients, I often find that when presenting, many people are afraid of Q&A. They're afraid of being asked questions. And we often have this mindset of, oh, they're trying to discredit me, or they're trying to pick on me or catch me out to make me look like I don't know anything. That is not a helpful mindset to have in your presentation. If you instead try to reframe it into a yes and, where you go, oh, my audience is genuinely curious. They just want to understand what's happening. They're engaging with the content. Isn't that fantastic? That can help us to, instead of responding defensively, being more like, oh, thank you for asking. That's a great question. And it highlights an important point that I want to talk about. Or you might say, oh, thanks for asking. That's a very interesting perspective. And let's explore that. Another one for you. That's a great question. And Okay, so this is for like, let's say someone asks a question and you're like, oh, I don't want to talk about that right now. Like that's off topic. It's going to go into a wormhole and I don't have time for that. You still give them that yes and mindset, right? So you go, okay, thank you for asking. That's a great question. And we may not have time to go deep into that today. So let's continue the conversation after the session. Does that work for you? So you see how we're still being very positive, collaborative. We're being open to what they have to say. A bonus tip here, when you program your brain to respond to questions with, that's a great question, thank you for asking. That simple phrase actually works to buy yourself time to think of the answer instead of having to answer straight away. A lot of people feel like, oh, I have to answer straight away. I can't pause. I can't hesitate. If you just have that phrase programmed in your mind, thank you so much for asking. That's a great question. And you can ask it very steadily paced. Thank you for asking. That is a great question. Meanwhile, your brain is working overtime trying to formulate an answer in your mind. That's a side benefit of using the thanks for asking. Another way you can use the yes and mentality in a presentation is to lean on other people in the audience who might also be able to contribute. So if someone asks a question and you're a bit like, oh, I'm not really sure about that, but I know that there's someone in the audience who is also an expert on this topic, you can say, yes, thank you for asking that. And I know that Marie is an expert in this. So Marie, would you like to share what your thoughts are on this? Or if you don't want to put someone on the spot, you can literally open it up and go, Joanna's asked a great question. Would anyone here like to contribute to an answer? I've got some thoughts and I'm really keen to hear what you have to think as well. So there's so many ways we can use this. The third scenario where you can use yes and at work is when giving feedback. Now, this is a very big one, and I know a lot of people are very afraid of giving feedback because they don't want to come across as being mean, or they don't want the other person to feel bad. And I see a lot of people struggling because they just don't have the right framework in order to give the feedback, or they don't have the language. And oftentimes feedback conversations are full of but, that word but. So I liked your presentation, but, or you're doing a great job, but, and it immediately puts the other person into a state of defensiveness. So instead of saying but, let's try to replace it with and. And so it's about how can we take what you're already doing well and building on it. Instead of saying this is what you're doing well, but these are all the things that are wrong. Okay. So for example, saying something like, look, your presentation had a really strong structure and I think we could make it even more engaging by adding a story. You see the difference? I'll do it with the but just so you can hear the difference. Your presentation had a really strong structure, but it needed more examples. Can you see? There's a difference, right? And so what this does, when you add yes and into feedback, the person receiving the feedback is more likely to stay open instead of shutting down. Just like with the improv game, it becomes a process of collaboration and we're building on. I actually incorporated this game, the improv game, into a training session that I was running for a group of regional managers for a very large retail company. And they'd never played this game before, and it was so interesting to see how so many of them struggled with the yes and. So many of them defaulted to the but, or like, oh, but what if? But what if? So like someone would say, oh, let's all go to the zoo. And then the next person would immediately go, yeah, but it's raining. And I had to really work to get them to focus on, hang on. It's yes and. We're building on. We're not shutting down people's ideas. And it was quite challenging for them to grasp that concept. And so maybe you are naturally a yes and person. And I see this all the time, right? It's some people are naturally more open and enthusiastic and accepting of people's ideas, and other people are naturally more cautious and hesitant to accept other people's ideas. And there is nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that you're a bad person or you're a bad communicator if you're naturally a no but person. We need people like you. Can you imagine if we all just said yes to everything and just moved forward without actually considering implications or what could go wrong and blah, blah, blah. So we need cautious people. This concept that I'm sharing with you is a tool that you can choose to use where it's appropriate in your communication, okay? And so when we are in these scenarios, such as giving feedback or having a brainstorming session or giving a presentation where we want people to feel engaged and connected, that is the right moment where you need to lean more into the yes and, okay? If you're having a critical thinking session where you're like, we need to really weigh out the pros and cons of this and we need to really like critique, what went wrong here, that's when you can be cautious and bring out the no but if that's going to serve you and the team and the goal in that situation, okay? So for all of you naturally cautious no but people out there, this is something that might feel more challenging for you to do because it's not your natural way of thinking, and that's okay. And this is a tool that you can learn to use in the most appropriate scenarios, okay? Now, one more tip I have for you in terms of how to use yes and is to also think about how you're using your body when you are in these scenarios. So we've talked about language to use, like the actual language. Now, I want you to think about how your body might look and what the difference might be with no but communication. So yes and body language looks like this. When people are sharing your ideas, you're making eye contact with them. You're nodding slowly. So you're slowly nodding to show that I'm listening, I'm hearing you, okay? We might have a little smile on our face, an open smile, okay? I'm not saying you have to grin like a crazy clown, but just a nice, pleasant smile, okay? We're keeping our palms open. So I want you to do this right now if it's safe to do so, if you're not driving. I want you to hold your hands sort of relaxed in front of you and then place your palms up. This is a really great position to be in when you are giving a presentation or in a meeting. I even like to point at people with my palms up when I'm trying to gain ideas and collaboration from people in a presentation. So I'll say, hands up who, struggles with this. All right. Tell me what your struggles are. And then someone will raise their hand and I'll say, yes, would you like to share? And I'll kind of point to them with my whole hand and my palm facing up. And so this is very much an open gesture saying, yes, I want to hear from you. Okay. So I'm keeping my body language very open. What we don't want is when people are sharing their ideas for you to stand there with your arms crossed, or maybe your hand covering your face, or maybe your default concentrating face is a scowl, in which case I'd like you to become more aware of that. Because even though you're like, no, but I swear I'm listening, I really am, I'm really focused, this is my focus face, other people may not realize that. To them, it looks like you're frowning at them. So when we're wanting to be more yes and, we need to make sure that we're being yes and with our bodies as well as with our mind, as well as with our words. Okay, now I know that there are some of you who might be more no but people who might be listening to this and going, yes, but this all sounds great, Christina, but if I say yes and to everything, won't people just walk all over me? I don't want to get stuck doing stuff that I don't want to do. And this is a really, really good question. And I'm so glad you thought of this, because yes and absolutely does not mean saying yes to everything. It's about being open to hearing and acknowledging contributions before responding. So you can still set boundaries. So what this might look like is you might say, okay, I hear what you're saying and I appreciate you asking, and I can't commit to that right now. So you see, we're still not even using but there, but I can't do that. You're saying, yes, I hear you, thank you, and I can't do that right now. Or that's an interesting idea, and given our priorities, we won't be able to pursue it this quarter. So you're still being very clear. And honestly, if someone asks you for something and you're an absolute flat no, it's okay to say no. Like if you're swamped and you absolutely can't take on any more work and someone's asked you to do something that's outside your job description of what you usually do and you have no time for it and you're not the right person, it's perfectly fine to say, no, I will not do that. With my other business, Podcast Services Australia, we produce, entire podcast seasons for our clients. And so there's a lot of items, a lot of deliverables within the scope because we're doing strategy sessions, we're doing recording sessions, we're editing, we're creating videos and all of that stuff. And sometimes we get asked for things that are outside the scope, like can we extend the recording session time, or can we have an extra round of edits, and can we have this and can we have that, or do you guys offer this? And a lot of the time it's like we don't do that, or it's not within the scope that you've paid for. However, we never say no. We have a yes and policy. So if a client asks for something out of scope, we say, yes, we can do that, and it's going to cost you this much. Or yes, we can do that, and that's out of scope, so let's have a conversation about it as to how we might do that for you moving forward. Like I said before, the yes and is a tool that you can use when needed. You use it when you want to encourage ideas, build collaboration, create that psychological safety, and to keep conversations flowing. You get to choose when you use it or not. So if you do one thing after listening to this episode, I just want you to notice when you say but, or when you say no but. That's your signal. I want you to feel it coming on, and it will, because we all do it. I want you to feel it coming on. You want to say but. I just want you to pause, take a breath, replace it with and. You can try it in your next meeting, try it in your next presentation, try it in your next feedback conversation. You can even practice this when you're talking about yourself, and it can be about anything. So you might say, oh, I was really hoping to eat cornflakes for breakfast this morning and there's no more milk. Yeah? Or I really wanted to wear those shoes today and they don't match with the pants. So practice using this whenever you feel the but coming on, because the more you practice it, the more it's going to retrain your brain to use it in the moment. And eventually, hopefully, you won't have to think about using it anymore. It just happens naturally. So give that a go, and I'm really curious to see how that small shift in your language can create a big change in how people experience you as a leader and as a communicator. Now, if you are looking for support with bringing more of this communication into your leadership, or you would love for your team to be collaborating better and to be learning these techniques as well, reach out to me. My email is christina@christinacanters.com. I run group training and I do one-on-one coaching for high-performing leaders such as yourself, as well as teams. Or if you want to learn more about what I offer, go to the description of this episode. You'll find links there to my website, christinacanters.com. Thanks so much for listening, Rockstar. Keep on being awesome, and I'll speak to you in the next episode. I'm Christina Canters, and this has been Stand Out, Get Noticed.